Asking important people questions as the camera moves closer to their face. What does gender equality mean to you?
So gender equality to me is about everyone, no matter what their gender, having an equal opportunity to do their very best. But what that means to me from a personal sense probably stems from my experience as being underrepresented as a gender within the discipline of engineering. And for that, gender equality means actually increasing the number of women that we have within disciplines where they are underrepresented, like engineering.
Have you experienced imposter syndrome in your career, and how have you tackled it?
I experience imposter syndrome all the time. I actually recently did a talk to 100 women about imposter syndrome, and actually my message was even people like me still experience imposter syndrome. And we need to both banish it, but also recognise that with imposter syndrome maybe comes a bit of humility, which is not necessarily a bad thing when you end up in a senior leadership role. So I experience it through worrying that I've only been selected for something because of my gender. And the way I deal with that is telling myself actually that, no, you're there on merit. You've got just as good a track record as other people within this meeting, within this board, who've won this research money. And the message I talked about to the 100 women a few weekends ago was about recognising what we're good at, not necessarily what we might not be so good at. So recognising the presence of our positive qualities rather than being more conscious about our negative qualities.
What do you think are the pros and the cons of being a woman in a very visible position in an organisation like a university?
So I do believe that role models are really important, and therefore having diversity amongst those role models is important. And of course, within university leadership, historically, we've had an underrepresentation of women, along with an underrepresentation of those from black and minority ethnic groups, as well as probably an underrepresentation of those with disabilities as well. So within that particular sort of context, it's really important to have diversity. It was really, really striking to me when I became a professor in engineering, because at the time I was one of only 3 women professors, and I think there were around 65 men professors within engineering. And there I realised that all of a sudden people were coming to speak to me about things because I was a visible woman in engineering. And I was asked to particularly lead a lot of discussions around gender equality, and perhaps provide a bit of mentorship to more junior women within the faculty as well. So I think having those visible role models who are prepared to provide a bit of support to those who might be underrepresented within that particular area is really important.
What achievement in work or in life are you especially proud of?
I'm asked this quite often, actually. So what achievement am I most proud of? Actually, part of it is sort of holding it all together. Being an academic, having a family, balancing research, teaching, academic service, still maintaining some contact with my friends is just like a massive juggling act. So I think probably what I'm most proud of is the fact that I've still managed to keep everything going, and actually I'm very, very proud of my children. And I know that you probably wanted an answer that was, it's about this big research grant I won, or the book I published, or the leadership roles I've held, and of course I'm proud of those. But actually, the thing I'm going to remember when my career is over is the conversations we have over the dinner table where my children take the mickey out of me, because that's probably more important to me than anything else.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I always laugh when children are at school. Certainly my children, they held up these little blackboards, and you had to say what you wanted to be when you grew up. And I don't think anyone ever writes Professor of Human Factors and Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. So actually, what I wanted to be when I grew up was probably a teacher. But I wasn't really ever sure, and I didn't really ever have a plan. So I came to university to do a psychology degree because I'd done sciences and maths at A-level, And I really enjoyed them, but I wanted to do something more applied. So I just followed a subject that really interested me. And then when I did psychology, I discovered ergonomics and human factors and discovered that really interested me as well. And then I just sort of carried on from there. So I'm still not really sure what I want to be when I grow up.
Is there a woman in your life who's inspired you in some way, and can you talk a bit about it?
There are loads of women that have inspired me in my life. I've been very fortunate to have a few women along the way who've just given me that nudge and that support. So someone called Professor Jan Noyes, who was at the University of Bristol, who very early on in my career was another professor in human factors and provided me with a little bit of professional mentorship. Actually, my mum was a computer programmer before I was born, and she inspired me through being technical. And, you know, my parents bought me a train set for my 5th birthday. They never expected or assumed that I'd fall into perhaps the traditional women gender stereotypes. But actually, probably the woman that inspires me most nowadays is my daughter. My daughter's very wise, and my daughter can be very straight-talking and very pragmatic in a way that I wish I could do. And so, actually, I think that all of the women around me who struggle sometimes with very, very difficult family circumstances, balance their careers and their childcare responsibilities and their families, they're the women who inspire me the most.
What advice would you give to your teenage self?
Oh, goodness. What advice would I give to my teenage self? Don't worry about trying to be cool, because I was never any good at being cool. And I felt a little bit like a bit of a misfit. I was very unself-confident about my appearance. I was very unself-confident in social situations. And so, actually, I think my advice would be to hang in there and to know that my time would come and I would build that confidence. I didn't find being a teenager very easy at all, actually. And I wasn't very good at talking about my feelings and my uncertainties. And I just sort of got my head down and carried on with studying and didn't really think about the wider world. So I think I'd try and advise my teenage self to step back a bit and look about what I was doing within the wider world and recognise all the exciting opportunities there are out there, and to not worry, because actually there'd be lots and lots of things that would be okay in my life in the future.